A single decision changed the fate of an entire family. When a brother married his older sister to a lion, not only did the entire village tremble, but this decision also drew a line between fear and love, a line that could never be crossed. After this marriage, something happened that completely changed the girl's life. To find out what happened, make sure to watch this video till the end. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more interesting and surprising stories. And share this video with your friends. Thank you. Once upon a time, there was a sultan who ruled over a country in Arabia. He had 4 sons and 4 daughters. He had ruled for many years, and as time passed, he grew old. His hair, beard, and mustache turned as white as snow, and he became ill in his old age. One day, he fell so ill that there seemed to be no hope left for him. In despair, he called for his 4 sons and said, "My dear sons, I am about to pass away, so listen carefully to what I have to say." Hearing this, the 4 sons were filled with great sorrow and began to weep. They loved their father deeply, and upon seeing them cry, the Sultan instructed them to stop weeping and said, "My dear sons, whoever comes into this world must eventually leave it. This is the law of nature, so instead of crying, listen carefully to what I have to say, and promise to follow my instructions." "Yes, father, please tell us." "We are listening," the sons said, wiping their tears. The Sultan continued, "When I depart from this world, people will bathe and prepare me for burial, and then they will take my body to the graveyard and bury me. After that, whoever of you stays awake at my grave for 3 consecutive nights will be the rightful heir to my throne. The son who becomes sultan must take good care of his sisters, ensuring no harm comes to them. When your sisters grow up, marry them off. The way you will arrange their marriages is that whoever comes to you first, seeking to marry a girl, you must marry her off to him, regardless of who that person is, be it a human, a wild beast, or a bird of the sky. Promise me that you will fulfill this instruction from your heart." The 4 sons swore an oath that they would carry out their father's wishes sincerely, although they were deeply puzzled by this strange command. They thought long and hard, but none of them could understand its meaning. They decided that their father, in his old age, had lost his senses and made a meaningless will. Nevertheless, they had promised their father, so they decided to follow through. After the Sultan passed away and they buried him in the graveyard, the eldest son decided to stay guard at the grave on the first night. As soon as the sun set, he arrived at the grave. As darkness deepened, huge bats began flying in the air, their eyes glowing with yellow sparks. The eldest son was terrified by this and found it difficult to stay even a moment longer in the graveyard. At midnight, the graveyard echoed with terrifying and eerie screams, as if ghosts were crying out in agony. The sound was so horrifying that the son's heart nearly stopped, and his body trembled with fear. He fled the graveyard before dawn. The next night, the second son went to guard the grave, but he had the same experience and fled in terror. The third son went the following night, but he too could not bear the fear and returned home. On the 4th night, the youngest son, Ahmed, who was the most intelligent, wise, and righteous among the brothers, prepared to go to the graveyard. His brothers mocked him, saying, "What we couldn't do, how can Ahmed do it? Do you think he is braver than us? Let's see, he will be trembling with fear and running back soon." But Ahmed tied his sword to his waist and went to the graveyard. His brothers laughed, but he was undeterred. Ahmed stayed awake by the grave, his sword in hand. He had heard that demons and evil spirits fear the sword, so he kept it ready. Suddenly, from the direction of the east, a golden beam of light appeared, and at the edge of the graveyard, he saw a terrifying giant with flames rising from its eyes. The giant's massive arms reached out toward him, its hands twisted like claws with long, sharp nails. Ahmed unsheathed his sword, and with a terrifying scream, the giant vanished. Ahmed collected the giant's severed claw and placed it in his pocket. As dawn broke, he returned to the palace. Since he had fulfilled his father's will, Ahmed was dressed in royal attire and seated on the throne. All the courtiers presented their offerings, and the poets recited verses in his praise. Ahmed rewarded everyone according to their status, granting them gifts and honors. Even his older brothers accepted him as the sultan and pledged their allegiance. During this time, Sultan Ahmed's 4 sisters had grown up, and he was eager to marry them off as soon as possible. However, the challenge was finding suitable matches for princesses of their status. He remembered his father's strange will, which had stated that whoever first came to him asking to marry one of his sisters, he must arrange the marriage, no matter if the suitor was a human, a wild beast, or a bird of the sky. One day, Sultan Ahmed was sitting in his court, hearing the cases of the people, when a fearsome lion entered. Seeing the lion, all the courtiers and guards ran away in fear, but Sultan Ahmed remained seated. The lion approached him, wagging its tail, and in a soft, human voice it said, "Greetings, Sultan Ahmed. I come with a request, and hope you will honor your late father's will by accepting it." Sultan Ahmed was taken aback. "What is your request?" he asked. The lion replied, "I wish to marry your eldest sister. That is my request." Sultan Ahmed was shocked and replied, "How can this be possible? How could a girl marry a wild animal like a lion?" The lion calmly responded, "Remember your father's will. What did he instruct you to do?" Sultan Ahmed, though surprised, recalled his father's words and said, "Fine. I will fulfill my father's will." At that moment, Sultan Ahmed arranged for his eldest sister to marry the lion. The lion then carried the bride on its back and left. Time passed, and Sultan Ahmed had no news of his eldest sister or her husband, the lion. He wondered whether it would be best to marry his 4th sister off to a human before another animal or beast came seeking her hand. The next day, as Sultan Ahmed sat in his court, a giant appeared before him, dressed in expensive clothes, with long hair and rings adorning his fingers. The giant approached Sultan Ahmed and said, "I wish to marry your 4th princess. I hope you will not deny me, as I am fulfilling a promise made by your late father." Sultan Ahmed, recalling his father's will, agreed to marry his 4th sister to the giant, and the giant took her away with him. Though many in the kingdom knew of the late sultan's strange will, they also understood that every word of his was full of wisdom. They mourned for a time, but eventually remained silent. Years passed, yet no one heard from the princesses. Meanwhile, Sultan Ahmed, saddened by their absence, was advised by his ministers and nobles to marry so that the palace would regain its former glory. Sultan Ahmed agreed, but the question was where to find a wife who was both beautiful and loyal, someone who would comfort his heart with sweet words. Far away, atop the high mountains, there was a grand castle where a beautiful princess named Kadija lived. Her parents had passed away, and she now lived alone in the castle. The kingdom's affairs were overseen by the prime minister, who would consult with Princess Kadija on every matter. In Kadija's chamber, there was a golden mirror on the wall, a gift from her aunt, who was renowned across the land as the wise woman. This enchanted mirror, also created by her aunt, had a magical property. Every morning, As soon as Kadija woke up, she would stand in front of the mirror and say, "Oh, golden mirror, tell me, who will marry me?" The mirror always replied, "Oh, princess, you will become the wife of a brave and handsome young sultan." Upon hearing this, Princess Kadija would sigh and say, "I wonder where that sultan is and what he is doing. When will I meet him?" One day, as usual, when the mirror gave its answer, Kadija called for her old nurse, the woman who had breastfed her as a child and whom she held in great regard. When the nurse arrived, Kadija said, "I am getting tired of being alone here. As you know, the Prime Minister handles the kingdom's affairs, and the people are happy, but I feel that I need to see the world beyond this castle. This will entertain me and increase my knowledge. What do you think?" The nurse, excited, replied, "My dear, whatever you decide, I am ready. Where do you want to go?" Kadija responded, "First, let's go on a pilgrimage to the holy city of Mecca." She added, "But there is no need to bring a large entourage. I would rather travel disguised as an ordinary woman." In order to avoid attracting attention, Princess Kadija decided to travel disguised as an ordinary woman, saying, "If I travel as a princess, I will be surrounded by beggars and paupers, and the risk of encountering robbers on the way is high. Let us take only 2 servants and essential supplies." Thus, Princess Kadija's small caravan set out from the castle towards Mecca. Meanwhile, Sultan Ahmed, sitting in his court, suddenly felt a sense of restlessness. He thought it would be nice to go for a tour, as he hadn't left the palace in a long time. He decided to take one of his trusted ministers with him, and they set off on horseback. By chance, they came upon the same road where Princess Kadija's caravan was traveling. The servants of Princess Kadija informed Sultan Ahmed that they were heading to Mecca for pilgrimage. Sultan Ahmed was pleased to hear this and thought to himself, "Why don't we also visit Mecca and join their caravan? I've heard that there are robbers on the way who might harass these women. If that happens, we can protect them." The minister agreed, saying it was a good idea. So, the 2 men joined the caravan, posing as traders. They told Princess Kadija that they were familiar with the route to Mecca and Medina, as they had traveled it many times before. Princess Kadija allowed them to accompany the caravan, and they continued their journey together. Kadija kept her face covered with a dark veil, but she noticed Sultan Ahmed, and she found him to be a very handsome and noble young man. As the days passed, they finally reached Mecca. They stayed at an inn and then visited the Kaaba for the pilgrimage, where many people were performing the tawaf, circling the Kaaba 7 times. Sultan Ahmed also completed the tawaf. Afterward, as they returned to the inn, Sultan Ahmed happened to catch a glimpse of Princess Kadija. He thought to himself, "This face surely belongs to a princess. I will marry this girl, but I don't even know who she is or if she is already married." That night, he shared his thoughts with the minister. The minister replied, "Your Highness, it's not a big deal. She is just an ordinary woman. Once she knows that you are not just a common trader, but Sultan Ahmed, she will be more than happy to marry you." Sultan Ahmed agreed and asked the minister to find out more about her and her intentions. The minister, obedient to his sultan, went to the old nurse and asked, "Greetings, dear lady. I hope you are well. If there is anything I or my companion can do to serve you, please let us know." The nurse welcomed them and invited them to sit. After a conversation, the minister learned everything about Princess Kadija. He returned to Sultan Ahmed and said, "Congratulations! I have learned from her nurse that her name is Princess Kadija, and she is the ruler of her own kingdom. In her chamber, she has a golden mirror, which tells her every day that she will marry a sultan, inshallah. Sultan Ahmed was overjoyed and said, "Then I must speak to her directly." However, he had not yet found the right opportunity, as the princess was always surrounded by her guards. Some days later, their caravan departed Mecca and headed toward the city of Taif, known for its cool springs, date palms, and many vineyards. The area was lush and green, a beautiful paradise. However, as they journeyed, a violent storm struck one night. The thunder, lightning, and the dense clouds were terrifying. The wind grew stronger, and rain poured relentlessly, tearing down their tents and soaking their belongings. There was no shelter in the desert to protect them from the storm, and the wind kept intensifying. Sultan Ahmed's and the minister's horses broke free and ran off. Seeing the disaster, the old nurse began to cry uncontrollably. Princess Kadija tried to comfort her, saying, "Don't worry, mother. God is our protector. He will certainly help us." But the old nurse, in her despair, said, "My dear, in such a situation, what will happen to us? Will God send us camels or horses to continue our journey? And if robbers attack us on the way, they will capture us and our servants as slaves." The old nurse, in her panic, began to cry again, saying, "They will sell us to someone and make us slaves." Princess Kadija replied, "Don't despair, mother. God will surely help us. Listen, I have a sacred amulet that my late mother gave me. It has the power to help in times of trouble." She then showed the nurse a shiny, star-shaped piece of metal. The nurse scoffed. "What can this metal piece do?" Princess Kadija said, "I will show you its magic." She took the amulet from around her neck, placed it on her right palm, and muttered a few words, then blew on it. Afterward, she said, "O holy amulet of Prophet Solomon, we are in great distress. For the sake of God, please help us and remove this trouble." As soon as these words were spoken, there was a loud noise, and a fearsome-looking giant appeared in front of Princess Kadija. The old nurse screamed and fainted at the sight of the giant. This was the same giant who had married Sultan Ahmed's youngest sister, but Princess Kadija was unaware of that. The giant bowed respectfully and said, "What can I do for you, princess?" Kadija ordered, "Please take us to a safe place." The giant replied, "I will take you all to my home, where you will be safe." Suddenly, the ground beneath them started to shift, and they began to rise into the air. Everyone, including Sultan Ahmed and his minister, closed their eyes in fear. A short while later, they found themselves standing in a beautiful valley, surrounded by tall mountains. In the center of the valley stood a magnificent palace, surrounded by lovely gardens. The giant led them into the palace. At that moment, a beautiful woman emerged from the palace. Sultan Ahmed was astonished to see that she was his fourth sister. "Brother," she cried, joyfully running to embrace him. "It's so good to see you. You are always welcome here." Sultan Ahmed asked in amazement, "Is this giant the one who brought us here?" His sister replied, "Yes, brother, he is my husband, and I am very happy with him. I couldn't have asked for a better husband. I thank God for his blessings." Sultan Ahmed sighed in relief. "I'm glad to hear that. I was worried that the giant might treat you poorly. Had it not been for father's will, I may never have agreed to marry you to him. But now I realize there must have been wisdom in father's will." He continued, "I wonder where our other 3 sisters are and how they are doing." His sister responded, "The one you married off to the Lion King lives nearby. If you wish, you can visit her." Sultan Ahmed was delighted to hear this and decided to visit her. They stayed at the giant's palace for 3 or 4 days. The giant and his wife, Sultan Ahmed's sister, treated them with great hospitality. New clothes were provided for Princess Kadija, the old nurse, and their servants, along with camels and horses for travel. Afterward, they received permission to continue their journey and headed toward the lion's residence. As they entered the jungle, they saw a grand house in the middle of the forest. At the entrance of the house, there was a large statue of a lion. Sultan Ahmed immediately recognized that this was the home of his elder sister's husband. He approached the door and knocked. After a short while, they heard the terrifying sound of a lion roaring and growling from inside the house. Everyone trembled in fear. Sultan Ahmed reassured them, saying, "Don't worry, there's nothing to fear." Just then, the door opened, and a large lion appeared, its jaws wide open, showing off its sharp, menacing teeth. At the sight of the lion up close, the old nurse screamed and fainted again. "Welcome, welcome, dear Sultan Ahmed." The lion recognized him, and, in a human voice, happily called out, come in, don't be afraid. Please, enter our humble abode." "Ah, it seems that the old woman has fainted out of fear. Bring her in as well. She will regain consciousness soon." Hearing this, everyone felt relieved and entered the house. As they stepped inside, they were greeted by well-decorated rooms, with numerous servants, slaves, and workers going about their tasks. Upon hearing the news of their arrival, Sultan Ahmed's elder sister came out of her room, and the two siblings embraced each other, shedding tears of joy. The elder sister explained that she was very happy with her husband and had no complaints. The lion had been a kind and loving spouse. The lion insisted that they stay for several more days, offering them great hospitality. He spared no effort in ensuring they were comfortable. Every day, delicious meals were served, and a variety of fruits were laid before them. One day, Sultan Ahmed spoke to his sister, sharing his desire to marry Princess Kadija. He asked, "Sister, would you be able to help me in this matter?" His sister, thrilled to hear this, expressed that she too had grown fond of Princess Kadija. She promised to speak with Kadija and that very night arranged for the marriage. The marriage took place with great celebration, just as the Golden Mirror's prophecy had predicted. After their wedding, Sultan Ahmed and his wife Princess Kadija remained as guests in the lion's house for a month. When the time came to leave, they thanked the lion for his immense kindness and hospitality. Sultan Ahmed said, "Brother, your kindness and hospitality have been unmatched. We have spent the happiest time of our lives here. I wish I could do something in return, but if there is anything you need, do not hesitate to ask." The lion replied, "There is one thing you can do for me. If you ever find the severed paw of a demon, bring it to me. I can throw it into the fire and return to my original human form." Sultan Ahmed was surprised. "A demon's severed paw? Why didn't you tell me before? I have one with me right now. I found it in a graveyard where my father is buried. I knew that such a paw would help break any enchantment." Hearing this, the lion jumped for joy and immediately ordered his servants to light a fire. The demon's paw was tossed into the flames, and as it burned, the lion disappeared, only to be replaced by a handsome young man standing before Sultan Ahmed. The celebration resumed, and the air was filled with joyous music. A few days later, the guests prepared to leave. The lion-turned man and his wife, Sultan Ahmed's elder sister, escorted them to the edge of the jungle. Sultan Ahmed and his wife then set out for the northern lands, heading towards Sultan Ahmed's kingdom. Upon their arrival, the people of the kingdom greeted them with great enthusiasm, offering a grand welcome. Sultan Ahmed and Princess Kadija ruled the land for many years, bringing prosperity and peace to their kingdom. Eventually, they grew old, and when the time came, Allah called them to Himself.